and welcome back to the NCMU podcast, where we are dedicated to raising up the next generation of nerd culture ministries. I always mess it up, Bubba. Ministers and missionaries. That's what it is. I'm your host, Mark, and I am joined today by a new guest, MrMasterWong. Welcome in to the podcast. We're so glad to have you on.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, MrMasterWong, you and I have not. Well, hold up. Do people always call you MrMasterWong, or is there an abbreviation?
You can call me Wong. Wong is
okay.
my last name, actually. So, but yeah,
okay.
It's way easier.
It is easier than saying all of the things.
Yes, all of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, for people who maybe listen to this episode who do know you, awesome. For those who don't know you, though, I would love for them to get to know at least a little bit about you. So tell me a little bit about like what you do and what you're doing on Twitch, what you're doing live streaming, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I'm Wong. I am 31 years old. I am based out here in Kansas City, Kansas. And basically I stream full time. I've been doing it for 3.5 years, full time for 2.5. Okay. I am married out here, and I do have a cat. I do have a dog. Basically what I do is I'm a content creator for Fortnite. So I've been doing that for ever since I started. And basically my mission is to encourage and inspire people every day. And we do that through setting a positive example for gaming culture. So we are family friendly. We don't rage. We don't swear. You won't find us being toxic. And basically we love on everyone who comes in. The reason of being is that I want to provide gaming culture with another option. So, they have all the examples under the sun, and I feel like for the most part,
and a growing number of them too.
Yeah,
really, like a growing number of negative examples on Twitch.
Yeah, absolutely, and just in content in general, just not Twitch, but TikTok. You have Instagram, you have everything. I feel like, and when people hear gamers, right, they think of some kid punching his monitor or cussing out like the people on the other side of the mic, Yeah,
because some of those very funny videos have gone viral.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's what you think.
Absolutely. So I feel like, those are the examples that are primarily out there. And for me, my heart and my mission is to just provide them with another option that you can be competitive in gaming and you can be good at your craft, but you also can love people. So that's my why.
Yeah. Oh man, I absolutely love that. I have friends in Kansas City, so off stream, off conversation, I'll have to connect on some of that.
Yeah. And
love that you included the cat and the dog. We have a cat moved into my garage this week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my kids now officially have Toby the cat, who is our garage cat. It's a fact that nobody asked for, but now we all have.
My wife wanted a cat, so we got a cat. But
so
I love it.
A cat.
I love it now. So
okay, well there you go. I'm not really much of a cat guy either, but I
was never a cat
girls.
guy. Yeah, never a cat guy. Grew up with dogs my whole life, but this is changed my life. So give it a shot, and I love her.
Well, so a lot of people, every person that we've had on the show so far, their faith and what they believe as followers of Jesus has been integral, has been really important in the content that they're making. And some of them, it's been like a full part of their brand. I don't think that's necessarily the case for what you're doing. I'm not terribly familiar with exactly how you portray that on stream, but I know that is part of at least a portion of kind of like what you do whenever you're streaming or whenever you're making content. And so it is family friendly, which I think is awesome because you're right. There isn't a tremendous amount of healthy content out there that you can consume that's even good for your brain. But then how does your faith play into what you're doing online and on Twitch?
Yeah. So I am not a shove the gospel down your throat streamer. I know like everyone has their own niche and what they believe the Lord has called them to. The two verses that I go off of when I stream is that they will know that you're my disciples by the love that you have for one another. And also it is the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. So those are the two verses that I run my stream off of. So you will find me being kind and courteous to every single person who walks in or joins in, even if they came in with malicious intent. We show love. And that through that, we've actually we'll say converted, but not converted. Like basically people come in with ill intent and then they come to stay because they're actually nice. So actually which one? that middle keyboard actually right there, a kid stream sniped me in a competitive game, right? Came in, trash talked me, right? And I was like, hey man, like, you know, I was kind, courteous, showed him love. And basically he apologized because he's also a Christian, but he was like, oh, I didn't know you love Jesus. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. And he's like, can I build you a keyboard? And he built me one and sent it to me. Right. So
the Holy Spirit's just moving. The guilt is real. Yeah. The conviction, my friend.
That was like one of the wildest stories. Low key, I was like, I don't know if he's actually going to send me a keyboard. I don't know like what but he like streamed it. He like built it together. He like sent me it. So I have it now. But just stuff like that is just like, I want to set that example to others, right? So in my channel, right, in my community, right, I am the standard for the community. And so with that, it's okay, we are kind and courteous to all. Why? Because Jesus would do the same, right? He would come, he hung out with people of all natures and showed them love. And it was the kindness that led them to repentance, right? So when you come into the channel, right, you're more than a viewer to me. Right. I ask you where you're from. What's your story? Right. And so are you in school? Do you work, family, kids, whatever it might be? And I remember things about you. Why? Is because you actually matter. And through that, basically there's a lot of relational equity that gets built. And so I've literally been there for people of all stages of life. I've been there for, people who've got married. You know, I've got people who I've been there for the births of kids, and you know, I've been there for miscarriages. Man, I've been there for people getting together, breaking up, literally just walking through life, through all the stages of whatever people are going through. I would say my average age range of viewers is probably around 25. So I do have younger audience, right? I do have the 13-year-olds and people, in high school, college. But I actually do have, I would say majority are parents who actually watch me. I say majority, probably at least like a little less than half. They watch me because they got on Fortnite for their kids, right? They learned, they learned how to play to spend time with them, and eventually, got,
hooked on it themselves.
Hooked on it themselves.
Now they love Fortnite. Yeah.
Downloaded Twitch, started watching, consuming content. So for me, it's not just I need people to watch me, sure, but at the end of the day, I want people to have community. So for example, like I have like all the moms in my community, and there's a role in my Discord where it's only moms, right? And so they have access to each other for resources, questions. They have their own mom group, where one, like they can play together, and two, they can, support each other. I have another one for dads as well. The dads aren't that active, but that's men, right? But, but basically like my goal is not for you to connect to me, but for you to also connect to everybody else who's in the community. So whatever you're like, oh, like I'm a nurse, right? Or I'm in nursing school. Cool. These are the other nurses in my community, right? So then you can have help, you can have community, and whatever it might be. So
that's awesome. I think that a lot of creators, specifically, a good deal of what they do just begins and ends with when they hit go live, or whenever they're done with stream. But your level of intentionality on the backside of that to say, I don't just want you to come and watch me play video games. I actually want to see you meet other people and build relationships with people. Something that a lot of people in the church world specifically don't even think can happen, right? There's still a lot of times the conversation in the church world is can you even build genuine relationship? And what you're doing is doing that in a much larger scale in many ways, giving people and really setting tables, just saying, hey, here's a space for you to meet other people and enter conversation. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, we have talked to a lot of people on the show that have done similar things, but very few who are kind of like, you are the person, right? You're the streamer. And I don't want to call it a solo act, but I'm guessing that you don't have like a paid staff and a big team of people around you. It's you, right? And in that, there's not a lot of people who also find the time to create those spaces where community can happen and people can engage and get to know each other. I think that's really awesome. So let me ask you this. You've been streaming 3.5 years, 2.5 years of that has been full-time. Am I correct about that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there was probably a point where about a year in, that you were making the decision to be like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
What were some of the key pieces in that discerning process that made you pull the trigger and go full-time content creation?
Yeah, so I started streaming as a joke. I was a COVID streamer back in 2020 of September, started as a joke, right? My ex at that point of time was like, hey, you're playing video games anyways, you might as well try to start. Like, you might as well make money from it, right? So she told me about Twitch. I had no clue what it was, downloaded it, hit go live. That's all I did. And essentially during that time, I was actually working full time. So my background is in leadership development and restaurant management in Chick-fil-A. So I've been doing that for about 10 years at this point. And that's all I've done. I'm working corporate jobs, running restaurants and managing stores, and started streaming on the side. Didn't know much about it. And lo and behold, people started showing up, and, I would say that the way I grew my channel was pretty old school. It was through just genuine relationships, spending time and taking time to get to know people, and then also going to other channels, building friendships, relationships, all that stuff. Which I guess it was not the norm to do that, because it's all like, oh, like you need to post TikToks and shorts and all this stuff.
Even a lot of the discussions we've had on the show has been, hey, the era when you could just hit go live and grow on Twitch died 6 years ago.
Absolutely.
The only way that you can actually grow on Twitch is to grow on YouTube and TikTok, other platforms, and then bring your audience over to Twitch. What you're saying is, now I pretty much just cared about people, and that made all the difference to bring people to my community.
Absolutely. And I think that built a stronger core. And through that, I could, like I said, I played Fortnite for the entire 3.5 years. I could swap to Apex tomorrow and I probably wouldn't lose any viewers, because they're not there for my Fortnite gameplay. They're there for me, right? I've worked my craft. I'm pretty good at what I do, but at the end of the day, they're there to spend time with me and with each other. So I did full-time streaming. I did full-time Chick-fil-A for a year, when I started.
Okay.
So I literally, I averaged about 4 hours of sleep a day. I'd catch up on sleep on Sunday because we were off at Chick-fil-A. But
so when you said like during COVID, I was doing this as a joke, you did it as a joke 40 hours a week.
Okay, right off the bat, I probably
close.
wasn't 40. I just really liked playing video games. Okay, like I loved Fortnite. I like through streaming, I met people very shortly into starting, and we would just play games all the time, and I'd be live. So the opportunity of meeting new people, right, would happen. I think within my first month or two, there was a kid from South Africa, right? He would wake up an hour before school just to come in. I had 5 viewers, and he would wake up an hour before school. He was one of the 5, and he'd tell me like, hey, this is what I'm about to walk into, right? We'd just talk, right? I'd give him advice. The next morning, he'd give me an update, right? Oh, this is how yesterday went. And this is like what we did for a couple months, right? And
with day to day.
Yeah, day to day. Like I showed up, and so me staying on late allowed him to come in early, if that made sense.
Yep, it does.
So like through that, that's when I got a taste for really what this can be, being on the internet, right? So the reason why I worked at Chick-fil-A was not because I love selling chicken. It's because I believe in the next generation, and I wanted to develop them in ethics, in values, in principle, right? And so that is what I love doing. My core of my being is to impact the next generation. And so not doing that just locally, but worldwide is why I chose to throw and invest more time in streaming when I first started. And so, like I said, I love playing video games. So I did essentially both of them full time. Probably shortly after a couple months in, I started like actually doing full time on both, with the intentions of, hey, one day, like I need to grow this to a place to where maybe I am self-sufficient. I'm not sure. And during that time, I was also saving up the money that I did make from Chick-fil-A. So I was saving up the money that I made from Chick-fil-A. And then with Twitch money, half of it went to upgrading my setup to where it could be quality enough when I didn't make that move. And then the other half went to giving back to the community and people that I met. So I was a giver. And through that all, basically after a year, I moved there was an opportunity to move in with two guys. So I ended up doing that, and my rent was like $400. Right. Okay. And that's like super cheap.
Very cheap.
I really felt like the Lord was like, this is the time. This is the time. And so I made a huge announcement video. It was a big deal. I was like, okay, for the next 6 months, right? I was single at this time, right? It's like, for the next 6 months, I'm going to give all I have into streaming, pursuing this, and see what can come out of it.
Yeah.
This was September 2021, so a full year after I started streaming. We pulled the trigger, and like I said, I was single at that time. And then 3 weeks later, I actually met my now wife.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and she's like, "What do you do?" And you're like, "I make $450 a month playing video games."
Exactly.
Yeah.
That our first date literally consisted of explaining Twitch, how I make money, all of that. That was literally our first date.
Yeah. You're like, "Please go on a second date with me."
Yeah.
Like,
essentially.
You're
right.
like sitting across the table, kind of flexing, hoping that makes up for things. You're just like, "Please."
Yeah. It's like, okay. I said, the money might not be there, but this is why I do it, right? And then it showed her the impact and all that. And to this day, she still supports me. She's a mod for me. She does everything that she can. But yeah, I mean, that's like honestly kind of like my journey, and I really felt like the Lord has given me a lot of influence and impact with a lot of people. And within that 1 year, I had multiple streamers coming to me telling me that like, oh, like, I can't believe like you've grown this much. Basically, like what you've accomplished in 1 year usually takes people about 2 to 3. So I felt like the Lord was giving me favor in the platform. He gave me opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so I just did it.
Yeah.
And
well,
yeah, continue. Yeah.
We've looked through and we've heard the story of a lot of different people, and we've asked this question over and over again. How did you discern that it was time to say goodbye to my job, goodbye Chick-fil-A? I'm going to pursue this all in. And what we've really determined is that there are a handful of ways that God has spoken to people, and sometimes that has been through other people who've spoken into their lives and said, hey, I think you should be doing this full time, go for it. There's been some people where it was like a divine strike a lightning thing, where it was just like, I have to do this, I have no other choice. And then there's people like yourself who are like, no, I enjoy this, I am passionate about it, I can see how it's making an impact. And the right circumstances came up, right? The right situations came up. God opened the correct doors. And I was able to move in with for your story, I was able to move in with a couple of guys. Rent got really cheap, and we were able to, to pull this thing off. Now, but since then, since going, full time making content, I'm guessing you're not living with the same two guys anymore.
Right.
A lot has happened in your life over the past couple of years. So we don't need to get into all of the details, but for people who are sitting back thinking about getting into live streaming, and especially if they're young, right, under 30, and you're in your 20s, you're kind of wondering, you don't know exactly what's next. Talk a little bit to me about some of the things that were both maybe really good and also really hard in the process of planning a wedding and getting ready to move and all of those things. But then also you have a content schedule and a streaming schedule and all of those stuff, editing and all of those things that are stacked on top of that you have to do as well.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot to unpack. But yeah, essentially, I mean, we did all that actually. I know you didn't know all that, but we did, we got married, right? We moved to Kansas City from Houston. I met her in Houston. We moved to Kansas City. We ended up buying a house. So we live in a house now. We have our own place. My wife is the primary income maker. And that is something that I had to work through as well. But basically, some of the awesome things that I got to work through from being full time was experiencing the Lord as a provider. That I think that for me, working a normal job, right? If I wanted to make more money, I just worked more. I picked up another shift. I worked longer. I worked overtime, whatever it might be. I am self-sufficient. And through being a full-time streamer, putting in hours doesn't mean I make money, right? Sure. I could stream a 24-hour, but if no one decides to gift a sub, I don't make anything. You know what I mean? And through that, like, it has caused me to rely deeply on the Lord. It relied on me being able to. I have conversations with him all the time of like, okay, like, this is kind of like, you know, there's also obviously my base need, and like there's the income that I desire, and sometimes we hit that, sometimes we don't, right? You can make anywhere from a couple hundred to a couple thousand. You know, it literally, because at my point in time, I am community supported, right? It's not like I'm not sponsored by any big streams or brands or whatever it might be yet.
So you don't have any steady, reliable, or normalcy in your income. Yeah. It's all like, let's see what happens this month.
Yeah, exactly. But with my background in Chick-fil-A, it's also marketing, right? Creating events, opportunities for income, right? It's like, there's my own due diligence in being able to plan all that. Incentivizing people, you know, there's all this stuff that I'm really grateful that my knowledge of working at Chick-fil-A came into. But honestly, like, my journey has been so beautiful in the way that I have always had one top donor throughout my journey. And they might be here for a week, they might be here for a month, they might be here for 6 months or a year, but then they go. You know, and every time someone has left, another one has shown up throughout my 2.5 years of full-time streaming. They've never overlapped, but they've always been there.
That's so interesting.
That is legitimately one of the most humbling experiences of my life. That God had, like, literally, I believe that he brings people into my life at the right times and with the right income, and that they are able to support and, you know, carry me through. There's literally about, off the top of my head, I can count 5 or 6 people that if they didn't show up when they did, I would not be full-time streaming today.
Yeah, God sends them at just the right moment.
Yeah, I literally, with dating, my girlfriend at that time had at one point $200 in my bank account.
Yeah, like at the very bottom.
Yeah, literally.
You know? And that's not an uncommon story for people who are in this space, right? It really isn't. And especially as you talk to people who really do believe they're doing this as a calling. They believe that God has like sent them in one form or another. I know we haven't used all that language in this call, but has maybe like this is the direction that God has sent them in their life, pushed them in their life. Have very similar stories of, man, I didn't know how I was going to make it. And then so-and-so, you know, I remember talking, I think to Jade on one of these episodes, like, yeah, I couldn't sleep and I was in a bad situation and my bed was awful, and a person literally bought me a mattress, right? Somebody from Stream at the moment that I needed it. Stepped in. And I think that sometimes that concept can be a little bit romanticized, right?
Absolutely.
People
I was
like,
going to say.
if I just get into it,
right,
someone will come through at just the right moment.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that's not always the case. However, you know, through our journey of planting a church and walking away from a steady income with 2 kids in a house to launching an online church in the gaming community during a pandemic, I can say that there was certainly moments where it was like, I have no idea what the next month is going to look like, what the next couple weeks are going to look like. God's going to have to show up. Yeah. And he has, with a pretty high level of consistency. Yeah. And I think that's another, you know, if there's a discernment process to figuring out is this the direction I'm supposed to go, there's also a confirmation process on the other side of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say that monthly, every month, I asked the Lord, is this still where you have me? I don't want to linger longer than you have me, and I don't want to leave before you go. And literally every month, I check in, because this is where I am called to be right now. But it does not mean that I get to hold it with a closed fist and, be stubborn of like, oh, like he will keep providing for me in this space. Right. Because like you said, like, and I've told my wife, right, at the end of the day, like if we need money, I will quit this and I will go get stable income. If stability is what we need, I will go do that. Because first and foremost, she's my priority. Right. Streaming is amazing. I get the opportunity to impact people worldwide daily. But at the end of the day, right, she's who I'm responsible for. And she needs to know that if it needs to happen, I will make that happen. Right. But until then, right, if the Lord keeps providing for us, and she's experienced him provide for us as well, we're going to keep doing this, Yeah. So I do agree with you. It is romanticized all the time, right? Because some people are stubborn, right? Oh, I'm a full-time streamer, right? Oh, but I'm broke. Okay, well, go get a part-time job, like
go get a job.
Yeah, like it's not the responsibility of the community to pay all your bills, right? Mm-hmm. It is out of the generosity of their heart, right? That of what they're able to do, right? But at the end of the day, like I am very fortunate, like we are still able to do this. But yeah, like I said, I check in with the Lord every single month of, hey, like, is this where you still have me? And is this what you still want me to do? So,
I think that there is something that's really powerful and super cool about certainly about your checking in. I think there's a certain amount of humility in that I think is really good for people to hear. And this idea that like, hey, just because God has called me into it this month doesn't mean that he's going to keep me in it next month.
Yeah.
And I need to live, even if this is a dream of mine, because a lot of people who feel pulled into this, it's confusing because they are like you, where they do love playing video games. And you're like, man, I feel like a calling from God has to mean that I have to move to a third world country. That's the only way it's a calling. And in this case, I love you just being able to hold that with open hands. We usually ask a question towards the end as we're getting ready to close the episode down. And that is, let's rewind 3.5 years. We're in the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And as a joke, you're hitting go live for the first time. What is the thing that Wong today would like to tell pandemic going live as a joke Wong from 3.5 years ago? If you had to give him one word of advice.
I give this advice to every single person that pursues streaming. And I would say, make sure your priorities are straight. There's this persona of the grind of content creating, of streaming, of gaming, that the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. And to an extent that could be true, right? You have to do your due diligence. You have to edit videos. You have to upload. You have to create content. There's all this stuff.
Sure. And you worked 80 hours a week for a season, right? You spent a year on that grind. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, on my deathbed, right, I'm not going to wish I streamed 12 more hours. I'm not going to wish that I created another banger TikTok or YouTube. I'm going to wish that I spent time with the ones that I love, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's in the midst of pandemic Timothy, right? Like I said, I averaged 4 hours of sleep. Right? I didn't have to do that. I just did that because that was my grinding mentality, right? I want to be successful. This is what people say, how I get successful. This is what I'm going to do, right? I work, 8-10 hours at Chick-fil-A. I come back, I stream another 8-10 hours, right? This is what I'm doing, right? And, I lost community during that time, like real life community. I lost my fitness. I didn't make time for people. And I think that is one thing that I would like to, that is one advice that I give myself or any aspiring people, is it's so easy to get lost in the grind, when you don't have to, it's all about balance. Like I used to stream about 12 hours a day when I'm full time. I do 6 now. Right. I spend 6 hours. I prioritize my wife. I prioritize, home ownership, my pets. I do need to prioritize going to the gym. Okay. Like there's things I need to do still. I don't have it all worked out. I'm not perfect. But there is also editing. There is also reaching out to brands. There is also like so much more than just playing video games. And I think that is that is like yeah, I think that's like the biggest advice that I have is make sure your priorities are straight. So like I tell companies and maybe potential orgs and stuff like that is it is God first, my wife, then after that I'm free game. So it's like I like all after that is good. Like my time is yours. Like I will work hard. I will do whatever it takes, but God and my wife come first. And those are the things that I need to make sure are taken care of. So,
yeah, I love that. You know, when we started the church, in some ways I was excited because I was like, I'm going to get to stream as part of my job. Right. And I think we were about 2 months in, and I realized that I was working 40 hours a week. And then the 9 hours that I was streaming weren't taking up my work hours. They were just on top of it.
Yeah.
And actually this year in 2024, I sat down and talked to my wife and I said, I think I'm done. Like, I think I'm done streaming, and I'm outside of making content with a couple of buddies for card games. I think I need to retire that for the sake and the good of the organization, and for the sake of my family, the sake of my physical health. Because, you know, in a very similar way, it was the grind and all consuming for the first 3 years. And getting back to the gym and intentionally being at dinner with my daughters and my wife became things that couldn't be negotiated away. Deciding, hey, we're going to work 3 nights a week and we're not going to work 6 because my family actually would like to see me. Having those priorities straight, and then the hard part is sticking to them, because there is a mounting pressure when you get into the space and when you're trying, because the work never has to end.
Yeah, there's always something to do.
There will always be something else you can do. There's always one more hour that you can put in. There's always one more tweak, one more project, one more video, one more thumbnail, right?
Right.
You could always be watching one more video, taking one more course.
Yeah.
There will never be a limit on the amount of time that this can take. And if you don't put boundaries on it, it will take all of it.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. I think for me, I let streaming have full access to my life when I went full time. And so it just consumed every area. And it wasn't until I put priorities and boundaries on it did I actually take control of my career. So I do agree that. No.
Yeah, that comment about I gave streaming full access to my life. It made me think of every time I visit a website and they want the cookies to have full access to my computer. And I'm like, man, I got to go through and tell you no, right? Like, if you're getting into this, go through the process, curate your life, and figure out what you're going to do. And don't give streaming full access. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Okay, Wong, as we're landing the plane here, any last words, anything else that you feel like was left unsaid today?
I don't think so. I think we covered it all well. I just want to encourage people that, you know, we are the light. And so just as, how do I word this? Basically, if you showing Christ-like features is all you can do, these people, this might be the only time that they get to see Christ is when they see you.
Yeah.
That's not worded the best, but basically, like, we are the example of him, right? Whether we're a viewer on Twitch, whether we are in the workplace, whether we are at the grocery store, right? There are unbelievers everywhere, right? And us being Christians, right? We are that example of Christ. So that might be the only time they see Christ. So I just want to remind people that, you know, show love and respect the people, and, you know, not to be cheesy. There's an evangelist that's quoted for saying, preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. Yeah.
And really what I hear you saying is, listen, you can be a light, and you can be a restorative force, a force of hope and peace and good things in the world, without always having to tell people that they're going to hell if you don't talk about Jesus right now.
Absolutely. And investing in people gives opportunity for relationship, and relationship is when things come down. Like, we talk about the Lord, not all the time on stream, but regularly we do, because people are like, hey, you know, this happened. What do you think about this? Or, hey, I heard this sermon, right? Or, hey, like, whatever it might be, or relationships, right? What do you think about this? And then, like, you know, I believe in the Bible, so I do bring it back to my beliefs, right? And principles that, you know, that the Lord has said. But there are opportunities for the gospel to be shared. And I ask that regularly too. God, give me an opportunity to share the gospel, right? I'm not going to shove it down anyone's throat, but dude, if you open it up, I'll share it, right? So
I love that. Absolutely love that. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Wong, thank you so much for being willing to come on the show. I really appreciate you. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And listen, guys, if you are tuned in to what we're doing at NCMU or the NCMC, which is really what this is under, the Nerd Culture Ministry Collective, then you would know that I'm going to throw another 4 letters at you as we close the show, which is the NCMS, the Nerd Culture Ministry Summit. Listen, guys, we just announced the location for the 2024 Nerd Culture Ministry Summit. It is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It is at Glen Erie Castle, which is literally a castle inside of Garden of the Gods, and it's not even crazy expensive to come to. Tickets are on sale right now. We already have a slate of fantastic speakers. I know one of our speakers, we have York Moore, who's going to be coming and speaking, who's the president of the coalition and CEO of the Coalition of Christian Outreach and the former evangelism head for InterVarsity. We already have Jacqueline Parrish, who is one of our keynotes last year, is the head of marketing for, I think, Southeastern Baptist Seminary. I probably butchered that, Jacqueline. I really hope you don't listen to that. Who's going to be coming and talking once again about the theology of fun with us this year. We have an amazing slate of speakers and events that are going to be going on at the castle this year, so you don't want to miss out on it. There's a link to check out more information and to register. And if you're a pastor or a ministry leader, register you and your team. Come on out. And if you don't want to stay at the castle, within a couple-minute drive, there's great hotel rooms right in downtown Colorado Springs, and you can come up during the day, hang out in the beautiful Rocky Mountains with us, and hang out in a stinking castle. We're going to be in like the grand ballroom for all of our keynotes this year. It's going to be awesome. So be sure to check that out. Once again, links for that are in the description of this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure they're in the description as well. Get registered for NCMS 2024. We'll see you guys there. That's going to wrap up this episode of the NCMU podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.